Welcome to our next presentation entitled Hardware Security. So we're going to talk in detail about how to secure hardware and the BIOS and the firmware that are embedded into the hardware. This presentation is one in the series entitled Secure IT Infrastructure Demystified. And of course, software engineering, we have to have a acronym for everything. So SITID, pronounced cited. I hath been to the mountaintop, and I hath sighted the promised land. We have seen the light. So if you haven't seen the cited series intro presentation, please view that now. The link is in the description of this presentation. And we're doing this series in response to the reality that many small and medium businesses are struggling with cybersecurity. And here is the audiences. And in this series, we're going to be delving into not only what to do, but how to do it. Here's a couple of my certifications. This is the network topology diagram of all that we're going to be building. And all demos in this series are going to be done with newly installed operating systems and services. This is important because if an existing software infrastructure is used for a demo, we're virtually certain to miss critical steps because those critical steps might have been done weeks, months, or even years ago and entirely forgotten. So we will not forget any critical steps by virtue of using newly installed operating systems and services. So let's talk about hardware security. If you remember, this whole series we're talking about building a modern, professional, secure, emphasis on secure, enterprise IT infrastructure. So for hardware, we have a couple choices. I'm using these Nuke Mini PCs, $200. And alternately, if you want to be more secure, you could get a cloud server, and I'm using an Azure cloud server, paying $57 a month. That's about $700 a year compared to $200 one time. So we could save a fair amount of money. And I purchased this from China, and it really doesn't matter. We have criminal elements in this country that are engaging in cybercrime. We want to make sure that our hardware is secure regardless of where it comes from. The key we're going to talk about is having an isolated network segmentation. This slide is from our previous presentation entitled Secure Erase. And here we talked about using Secure Erase to get rid of residual features that are on the hard drive. And that's important to do that. However, a Secure Erase does not clean the hardware, the BIOS, the firmware. So I went into a large language model and I asked, hey, what are the hardware security implications that we need to be concerned with? And I got this answer. So these large language models, artificial intelligence, they're great, right? Recent reports of malware have been preloaded onto certain Chinese mini PCs. Aha. And the scary part is number 3 here. This is what we're talking about. It could be embedded in the firmware or the BIOS, and they could completely take over your system. They have Trojans that are built to do exactly that. Okay, and we got all this other great information. Here they talked about what we're going to cite as the big solution here, having a separate LAN or a guest network. And now you're probably saying, yeah, Conrad, so let's go through each one of these individually and let's determine how to make this secure. And we're not going to do that. okay? And the reason is that, especially for production systems or anything that's on your corporate network, your organization network, do not take on the responsibility for hardware security onto your shoulders, right? We could go into a large language model like ChatGPT and say, hey, I've got a whatever vehicle, how do I rebuild the engine? And it'll give us a detailed list of how to do that, okay? But most people would not do that. I actually rebuilt an engine a long time ago doing just that. But most people don't want to do that. You don't want to take that onto your shoulders as a responsibility. If you have a production system without sensitive, restricted, or private data, it may be okay just to get one of these nuke PCs and go ahead and do it. But ultimately, you want to get a hardware vendor, whether you're getting physical hardware like a nuke PC, a nuke mini PC, or a cloud server, and they're going to take on the responsibility. Now, if there's a breach, then you didn't do it, okay? It's the responsibility of the vendor, and you're going to pay for that, okay? However, if we're doing really what we're talking about in this series of presentations, building a development test lab, and you use an isolated network, a network segmentation, then it's okay to go ahead and use a nuke PC. And again here, this is what we're talking about, having an isolated network, okay? This represents, as I said earlier, either your corporate organization network perimeter or the LAN on your home office PC network. Okay, great. So there it is. Everything you always wanted to know, but were afraid to ask regarding hardware security. And we'll see you next time.